On the edge of Sheffield city centre, there's a square called Paradise Square, and when it was built in the 18th century, paradise is how it must have seemed. Big townhouses, open cobble piazzas, it looked beautiful, and it looks beautiful to this day. Down at the bottom of the hill below it, there was an inn that was run by a man called Woolhouse. And Woolhouse had a man working in the pub who was lame and had been lame for many years, all his life, and went about on crutches. And the man lived in a house on Gregory Street, and every day he would get up, hitch his crutches onto his arm and go limping down along the banks of the River Don as far as the inn and then back again at the end of the working day. And it happened one time that the man had some business to transact in Sheffield, up the hill, not on his usual beat. And in those days, this was before Paradise Square had even been built, and so the whole ground at the top end of Campo Lane was an open field called Hicks's Stile. And there was a stile at the top over the fence that led into the long grass and down the hill. And the man spent his business in Sheffield and was coming home late that evening, limping along Campo Lane. It was dark. There was no street light, no greater light by night than what you could carry in your hand in a lantern or candle, and so it would have been very dark, much darker than it's been now for many years. And he heard a noise behind him, and he turned, and he saw, or thought he saw, that coming through the shadows towards him down Campo Lane, from the dark streets of the town of Sheffield, was a bar guest, a spirit of the edges, a spirit of the gates, a demon coming towards him. And he was so frightened he quickened his pace and began to try to get to the end of Campo Lane so that he could go down the hill towards his home at West Bar. But as fast as he went, the thing went faster, and in the end, in panic, he threw his crutches and threw himself after them over the stile at the top of the field and cut across the long grass until he caught the path at the far end of the field that went down to West Bar Green, and in that way he made his way home safely. And he hammered on the door. His wife opened the door, and he rushed inside and slammed the door behind him, and she said, "What's got into you?" And he says, "You'll never guess what I've seen coming across Hicks's Stile on the way back from Sheffield." And she said, "Well, never mind that, where are your crutches?" And he looked down at his hand. His crutches were gone. He said, "Well, I must have thrown them aside as I was crossing Hicks's Stile." And she says, "Well, we can't afford another pair, you'll have to go back and fetch them." And he says, "You think I'm going out in the dark tonight? You've got another thing coming." But in the morning, he went back up to Hicks's Stile, and he found his crutches lying there in the long grass. And it was only as he stood there, under the sun of the morning, that he realised that for the first time in his life he'd walked without his crutches. He'd run without his crutches, all the way from halfway across Hicks's Stile down to West Bar Green, and then walked back again in the morning. Only he hitched his crutches onto his shoulder, walked back down the hill to the pub that his boss Woolhouse's grandfather had, and told everyone all about it. And Woolhouse's grandfather was so pleased that he shut up the pub, and they broached a barrel of ale and spent the day quite merrily, and the man walked easily and freely for the rest of his days. That story was told by Woolhouse to his grandson, Joseph Woolhouse, who wrote it down around the 1830s. And for many years he would tell it around the pubs and inns of Sheffield, and then towards the end of the 1800s, his story fell into the hands of another man called Davidson, who printed it, and that's how it's survived to this day, as part of a much longer book description of the town of Sheffield. It just goes to show that no matter what strange or terrible things you meet with on the roads, sometimes they'll still do you good, because the man was cured of his lameness by a bar guest. And stranger still to tell, if you go to Paradise Square now, and stand at the top of Campo Lane and look round, you can see, of course, the lie of the land has changed. The city has spread as far as the eye can see in all directions. Hicks's Stile itself is gone under the cobblestones. The cobblestones are no more than a car park, and the townhouses surround you, as well as the sights and sounds and smells of a busy city centre. And yet one thing hasn't changed. If you look between the parked cars, you can still see, running from the top to the bottom corner, of what used to be Hicks's style is a straight footpath between the parked cars leading onto West Bar Green, down Silver Street towards Gregory Street, past a pub called the Three Tons. So even now, you can stand in the middle of Sheffield and look out and see the path that the man followed as he fled the Barghest of Campo Lane.